Test. Should be live. Alrighty. Okay. Alrighty, welcome. So let's kick us off. This is recap number 12. Thank you for stopping by. What I want to do on this call is, instead of just jumping right into product updates like we do every recap, I want to talk to you, zoom out a little bit, talk about Capsilon. Maybe you've never used it before. Maybe you've just heard me mention it 1,000 times, but have never actually figured out why I built it in the first place, why we have a team around it now, why we're growing. So I wanted to start with some of the basic value prop here, which is Capsilon makes it easy for you to go from any site you're on, or any client you're on. So we primarily target Twitter and the Arena right now, or Twitter, Discord, Telegram. And we say, you can give us information and we'll make it easier for you to analyze that information, right? So as an example, if someone comes in here, let me pull up in my Chrome extension, and I go to my watch list, you'll be able to see that for this Real Kiyosaki tweet that he, if I click here, you will see the target tweet, Bitcoin to 100K by June 2024. And our algorithm can parse that. So it basically then translates that to a price. So if we click here, excuse me, a score, not a price. So it says, based on this asset and target, etc., this is worth 5.4 points. And you'll notice some additional information here. For watch tweets specifically, you can actually edit this information because we assume that the algorithm isn't going to always get it right. And also, these points aren't assigned to anyone. Unlike if you create a prediction yourself, these are just for you to be able to watch afterwards. Kind of like if you've been here for a while, you remember, what was that? Remind Me tweets. The Remind Me tweets back in 2018, 19, right around there, was really popular. And it was kind of used as like a passive aggressive way to call people out. So you would make a price call and say, Bitcoin's going to 100K. And someone else who didn't believe you would say, like, remind me in 60 days or whatever. And initially, I think it started out with good intention, which is people wanted accountability. Towards the end of the use of the product, before CT kind of moved away from it completely, it just became like a passive aggressive, like, nah, bro, you don't know what you're talking about, right? So this watch list is basically an easy way for you to be able to, watch what you're interested in without the passive aggressive, implications that came with the Remind Me tweets, right? So going back to the product here, so you can see how we just went from a source, which was Twitter, and then we basically took that data. How did we take that data? Well, in this case, any tweet you click will then be added to your watch list. So now I've added Mert's tweet here. And if I go to my watch list now you'll be able to see that. Here's Mert's tweet. And in this case, you'll see this prediction is not scored because we did not find asset, price, target, and expiration. So our engine assumes that you're only watching things that are tied to predictions, but you can use this in a generic way. So if you don't have any of that data, it's totally fine. You just basically get a render of the tweet and you can look back on it. And then if you go to your watch list later on, you'll be able to see all that information, right? So it's a useful thing. You can also use it to watch polls, which is nice. So if you have someone who's made a poll like Xerox Smack did, you can watch those polls, bring them into the app, check them directly from the Chrome extension, etc. So we give you a lot of the overlays there. Now, the cool thing that I think is worth paying attention to with all that is that we have what is it? Sorry, 1 second. We have the ability to render that information in multiple ways. We assume that you're going to primarily be using that to get back on track with Chrome extension or Twitter, right? However, the idea is that we want you to be able to use this anywhere, right? And you'll notice that I put together a little chart down here that shows you where we take in information and then where we output information, right? So anytime there's a source that's not defined, that just means that we're calling an API generally. So like in the case of the Arena or Friendtech, right? But you can see for the output, if we go to, let's say, we go to Max's profile here, you'll notice that this information is live. We actually had to disable, there was a bug with the tooltip overlay. So we ended up disabling that. So that's why you can't highlight right now. It was throwing a bunch of errors in console log. We're going to re-enable that in the future. But at any rate, you can see the price change over time. Let's go to Ace's profile. Maybe he has more buys and sells, so you can see a little bit more dynamic. Nope, is what it is, I guess. But if I'm looking at this, the point is that we're taking in data from these target sources and then displaying them, right? Now, if I look at something like Twitter, for example, we can take source from someone making a prediction, right? So if I did something like Caps One app, CS predict, Bowden will go up 30% by end of next week, right? So I can make a prediction like this. And now, based on that asset's individual volatility, I'll be able to see all of that live, right? So what will happen now is this basically, the way that the Twitter API works, specifically, we have a rate limit because of the wonderful changes made by Elon. So now, basically, this means that our service will go in every 3 minutes and it'll look for tweet updates. And it'll pull all of them and say, this is the most recent batch. Okay, yeah. So now looking at this from, let's use Discord. Let's keep this demo train rolling. If I were to say, check an asset, right? People are talking about Boomer right now, right? So I check an asset, I can see that information. If this is in a, let me do it in general. If I did something like this and I did, let's see, CS stats, and I wanted to brag to people. Now, most of my stuff is tests, so maybe this isn't worth bragging about, of course. But if I share that, now anyone in this channel can see that information. So by default, if you go into Discord, if I were to do, I want to see the price of Bitcoin, for example, you'll be able to see that. And it'll give you more information where we got the source, overall return, et cetera. We're going to add some additional things here, but the point is you can use this as just a helpful utility wherever you are. Discord and Telegram are instant. Twitter has the delay because of the API rate limits. Now, going back to this, we've just showed a couple examples. In the case of Twitter and Discord, where I'm sending a tweet or sending a message in the Discord, I've sent that out and then I've got something back immediately, right? After the finished processing. Same thing works for Telegram. I'm not going to pull that up just because I have some sensitive conversations in there and I don't want to, I'm only sharing. I'm dumb. I'm really, really dumb. Okay, well, anyways, we did the demo in Discord. I'm just dumb. Sorry for people who just saw nothing on the screen while I talked for 60 seconds. Let me actually take a screenshot of this just so you guys can see what I was talking about and load it here. So this is an example where I was typing CS stats and then sharing it with the channel. Here's an example where I was using CS asset, and then you can see that response for Bitcoin, right? Again, sorry, I'm apparently 80 IQ. So going back to this, now you can see that we have some dashes here, right? And the dashes basically just say, hey, these are things that we plan to integrate in the future. STFX, obviously, we've talked to their team. We have some higher priorities right now, but we're very interested in integrating with them. Farcaster, people seem to be talking about them. We've had, I think, 1 or 2 of our investors actually ask us directly to add them. So, that's definitely something that we're going to do. SMS, this is something that I think is less popular, but we already wrote a Twilio proxy. So they actually rejected on the basis of us being crypto oriented. If you were in the fundraising stream we did yesterday, where we talked about the challenges for founders and how to go about fundraising in the space and some ethical considerations and all that, One of the things I pointed out was how it's really difficult to use traditional channels, even if you're doing things totally legitimately and above board in a legal way. Just by mere association with crypto, people will like shut the door on you, right? And so that was what happened in the case when we were initially looking at equity crowdfunding, right? So all that to say that we have some additional integrations that are coming, but this whole pipeline, we go from a source, the engine processes it, so everything we built at Caps One, that then distributes that to clients, and those clients can either be extensions, like in the case of Chrome, bots in the case of Twitter or Discord, or apps in the case of, for example, our web app, right? Now, that may sound like redundant, or why is this plural, I guess is the way I would say that. We're going to be adding a CLI, we're going to be adding a desktop app, et cetera. So as time goes on, this app kind of portfolio will continue to grow. But the bottom line here is that all of these things work in tandem. And the main difference in terms of how these interact differently with your source, sometimes the source has an overlay. So for example, if I click into the Caps One dashboard here, you can see that we overlay that information, and we can see all of the overlays. Shout out to Rocco, Man Pot Pie, and Bollinger Beans. And so you can then pick and choose between any of these examples, and then you'll be able to browse your dashboard just like you would expect. So you could actually create a dashboard from scratch. You could add your swan score and charts and, design it however you want, right? In this case, if we did, let's make this a little different. There we go. And I'm not going to do a full dashboard here on demo, but I'm sure you get the idea. So now on the next refresh after that new dashboard saves, now it'll be available, and then you can see what we just created, right? You can also then access this directly from the application. So if we go to dashboard and I see new dashboard here, you can see that what we just created from Twitter is available there, right? So we're, to my knowledge, we're the first company to bring this to Crypto Twitter, and we're going to continue to push this so that you guys get top-notch experience. So some of the things you want to see in terms of the arena and that sort of thing, we want to, continue to work with these teams so that they can rely on this product and their communities can continue to grow as a result, right? Caps One is not we have a mention of a social product here. We're going to add some chat and basic features, but we aren't adding a bonding curve key selling mechanism like the vast majority are. And that's an intentional decision. One, because it's not our core business model. And two, we actually want to, integrate with these existing companies, bring you a top-notch experience, not worry about having to compete in that realm. So we have other ways that we're going to compete with different companies, but we don't want to touch that one specifically. So now we've kind of talked about the core mechanism here, information into our engine. That engine then responds to these clients, and then those clients sometimes get a response back over text. And in the case of Twitter and Arena, they actually get a Chrome overlay, right? Now, expanding on this a little bit, we just mentioned the dashboard. Now, what I want to talk a little bit about is where we're going. So in recent, weeks, if you've been on any of the recap, there we go. Someone's got to tweet that. On any of the recap streams, you'll notice that we've talked a lot about this strategizer function, right? Now, why have we done that? Well, because the strategizer really represents the next big push for Caps One, which is allowing you to easily backtest ideas, right? And if you think about it, zoom out for a second, Caps One really started with this idea of I want to be able to check people and ideas in real time, right? So if someone says to me, I remember, shout out to Kagan, that basically we're going to use some basic indicators and make a killing. And back in the day, I think that when crypto was smaller, because people were converged on more assets, there was a lot of opportunity that was kind of just left curve, right? And so, for example, I remember him telling me about a MACD strategy for the first time, and him showing me the MACD cross and all these different things, and me thinking wow, this looks so simple, but what is this magic, right? And as you get into the space more, you realize it's not really magic, and really most technical analysis is a massive shelling point. In other words, a bunch of people expect it to work, and therefore it does work, right? There's a reason that there's convergence around different time frames and that sort of thing, but it's more it's more cyclical, right? Now on the kind of mid side of the bell curve, you get a lot of people that say like technical analysis is worthless and it's like horoscopes for crypto bros or whatever. But obviously, people who trade successfully know that technical analysis is valuable, just like fundamental analysis is valuable. The problem, of course, is that if you don't find something that has market convergence, then it's completely isolated. So the question is, how do you save yourself time, right? Because you don't want to have to navigate this from scratch every time. So what we've been working on is an easy way for you to get started without having to start from zero every time. So here you can see, and again, this product is still like under development, right? This, or I should say this feature within our product. So if I look at, for example, let's recalculate this for March, and now we'll be able to see what happens if RSI 50 is below the 58 moving average. And now it'll tell me the total return. And then if I were to click and see, all right, let's do SOL, just for everyone likes green. Now I can actually see the overall profit for that given strategy, one candle shy of LEAT. And then you can see the trade that was entered, the open and close price for that trade. And then you can actually see the P&L, et cetera, over a period of time, right? So what this does is it gives you like a really high level way to be able to interact with ideas that you have. And going back to this chart, you can start to see, okay, there's some value there. But obviously in isolation, that may or may not be something you want to use, right? I see some value in it. We got some really positive feedback from it so far, but it's not fit for everyone. Especially, I have a bunch of friends who are quants, and so they're looking at that. They're thinking like, why would I want to drag and drop? It's like a no code solution. Why would I want to use that? No code either makes perfect sense to you or it doesn't. And for me personally, no code is a type of product where generally I'm not a fan, right? So why would I want us to build a no-code solution if I'm generally not a fan of no-code? The reason is that we're adding bi-directional support. So the vision here is pretty simple. We're going to be releasing an open source charting solution. Now, this is an idea we first discussed in the beginning of April. I've since done a little more research and realized that it's viable. And what that open source charting solution is going to consist of is basically 4 main parts. Well, a little more than 4, but we'll say 4 main parts. So first, the charting library itself. This is going to be written in Rust using WebGPU. Originally, I was looking at using Bevy for this. I realized that it was an unnecessary overhead. I was a little, head of my britches there. So we're just going to stick with Rust and WebGPU. WebGPU for anyone who's maybe less technical, is just a different type of graphics rendering library. So you can actually use the underlying GPU from the web. So you might have heard of WebGL, for example. WebGPU is just a different standard that's been proposed. I think it's, I don't know exactly how many years old now, a couple. You'd have to Google it, but it's fairly new, has much less adoption than WebGL. However, it is quickly becoming the new standard. And it'll probably, just like most standards, when you first heard about CSS Grid or whatever, it takes years for full adoption. And so again, we're going to continue to build on this standard, but understand that that kind of underlying mechanism is going to take time. And so some people have varying opinions about that. But tech stuff aside, the reason we care about this charting library is that it will allow us to not only improve our product. So like if I look, for example, let me go to Capswan and click on this prediction, Bitcoin will go up 3%, right? So if I click on show chart, you'll notice that our chart looks weird. And if you've never thought about why it looks weird, I'm going to explain. You'll notice that over here, all the candles are gray and condensed, and over here they're extended, right? And they're like wide and fat. Why is that? Well, it's because these are actually 2 separate charts. Why did we do that? Well, we wanted to be able to show data before this time frame. And we ended up in like a really weird point where we had to do some customization that the charting library that we use, which is a great charting library, just doesn't support that. And so we realized that we needed to either A, spend a ton of time customizing what already existed, or B, build it from scratch. And as you can guess, the only real game in town right now for this sort of thing is TradingView. The problem is if you want to get started with TradingView, it's open source, but not really, in the sense that if you want to sign up for their premium, or I don't remember the exact tiers, you have to sign a contract. And that's pretty jarring for a company that's trying to get started. I don't know what TradingView is, what their intentions are. And so they have some, legal language in there up to that makes me reticent, right? And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to get into the legal side of it. But all that to say that it works great for a lot of people. TradingView is the industry standard. People love it. However, I think that there's a better way for us to move forward, and that's where I'm excited about Caps One Charts. It's going to improve the core of our product in some very specific ways. But on the flip side, it's also something we're going to release to the community. And part of the strategic reasoning behind this, beyond just, hey, here's another charting library that you can use for free, is that we're going to be adding a DSL where you're able to actually overlay indicators, right? So think of like a PineScript, but like SwanScript or something along those lines. We'll probably call it SwanScript if I had to guess, but you get the point. And then we're going to be adding, if you don't know, a DSL is a domain-specific language. So SwanScript, PineScript, any type of like subset of a language that executes a specific task, you have that DSL or domain-specific language. And then there is a wrapper. That's maybe a wrong analogy, but there's this concept of a language server protocol. So if you're a nerd, if you're a quant who's used to using Python and maybe use PineScript or whatever, you're used to like some pretty colors in your IDE, right? And so there is this concept of ASTs or abstract syntax trees, where basically it'll give you some information about how everything is structured. And this LSP is just a standard that says, here is this language protocol. And it will basically allow you to parse individual parts of the language, so you can break it down. Hey, function foo, the word function is actually a keyword in the language, right? We want the IDE to be smart enough to recognize that. So we're going to add an LSP so that you can actually have a first-class experience. I'm a big fan of NeoVim, but if you don't like that, you're a VS Code guy, shout out to Grug. You'll be able to use this LSP wherever LSP is supported. LSP is backed by Microsoft, so that means it's pretty much ubiquitous, right? And then the last piece of this, we're going to come back to this in a second. The JS SDK is basically just going to be a wrapper around this charting library so that you can then, write it in front end of your choice. And then we're going to supply a React library. Now React, because we use it, but this, community support, we hope that people will contribute Vue and Svelte, etc. But the bottom line here is that this JavaScript SDK is going to give us a lot of freedom. Now, Polyglot Translator, there has to be a better name because I realize that sounds dumb. But the reason I'm sharing it here is because the core idea is that we want people to be able to pipe in Python, PineScript, etc. And this is, I think, I've talked to some people who were kind of hesitant about the Strategizer at first. There's been about 3 or 4 people where they didn't quite get the vision. And the point where I finally just kind of like, as a small company, you got to be careful to some degree about what you share, right? So you're always kind of, it's this matter of like, here's what we're doing. And then people want to know why you're doing it. And if you share too much, you overplay your hand. And so in this case, I finally just said, screw it. We're going to open source this. So let's just, talk about it. And that is that we are leaning in this direction of you can support Python, PineScript, and whatever else through this DSL, right? So you'll be able to translate that externally. Now, going back to above this chart library, you're like, well, why do all this work? This is a lot of work, obviously. This is not like a small, you could have a company around just this thing. We're going to build a very like MVP version of it to get it out the door. But the point is, like, you could build a really high quality, free and open source solution around just this without the rest of the work that we have to do for Caps One. So why bother? Like, what is the strategic advantage for Caps One specifically? First, it's a product that we want, right? As developers, it's something we want to use. So there's that, obviously, and that's the overlap with other people as well. Secondly, there are some ways that we can use this in our paid products that I haven't talked about yet, which is pretty exciting, and I'm going to hold off on that discussion until a future recap. But third, this means that we're going to be able to leverage this for our strategies, right? So now people can then take their own strategies that they provide. Why does that arrow look different? Man, that drives me crazy. There we go. You'll be able to go back and forth between these charts and strategies. So if someone loads up, say, a strategy inside here, whether that's visual or something they typed, or a script that they loaded, you'll be able to load all of that in the Caps One. And then, and this is really important, if you follow me, you know that vendor agnosticism is important. I hate vendor lock-in. And if you're a developer, you understand exactly why. If you're not a developer, maybe you don't care. But the bottom line is, like, you should own your own data, right? As a company, we want to provide you a service that you want to pay for. But at the end of the day, if you go like, screw CapSwan, more like CrapSwan, am I right? If that's the point that you hit where you're like, deuces, I'm out, you should be able to take all of that information and run, right? We shouldn't have this moat that keeps you trapped in. And that generally is one of the huge advantages of open source products in the first place, is that you don't have to worry about that sort of vendor lock-in. And obviously they tend to be free. Sometimes they have paid licensing and that sort of thing. But generally they're free, right? So but beyond the free, there is some really, huge advantages in using open source products. So we want to be able to, some of our stuff is going to be open sourced, some of it's proprietary closed source. And as a result, we want to make sure that you're not locked into the product. And this little piece right here that we're talking about is really key, where you can then take anything you have, use it inside of CapSwan, and then run. If you don't want to use this anymore, you have the freedom to leave. We don't want you to be here if you don't want to be here, right? That's a bad experience for both of us. So the Strategizer is really just one step in that direction. And that's why I'm excited about this. Not just because, hey, it looks kind of pretty and we can scroll around and, we can, make some changes and whatever. Like I am interested in all those things. I think that this is cool, but again, I'm not a no code kind of guy. So if this was the only part of it, I'd say like, oh yeah, there's some utility here. I'm excited about A, B, and C. But the thing that makes me excited about this, where I'm like, yeah, this is the future of CT, is that not only are you going to be able to use what already exists, but then you're going to be able to translate this to this strategy view, right? That's never been done. And then I can jump into Twitter and I can load that strategy directly in a page, right? So now I'm not stuck worrying about, hey, how do I access this in a convenient way? I don't have to worry about that. So really, really excited about that. There's some other features that we're going to be adding for the optimizer, for example. We'll talk about that at a later date because we have like a very, very internal early version of that, but I don't want to just be confusing at this point. Now, what I want to go into some detail about is this right here, which is the groups and chats. So we have a group feature currently, right? So let me go over to groups here. If I were to look at, say, EdgeSimps, and I can see, all right, Gojo and I are in here. And I don't think him and I have tested in this particular group in a while. Yeah, but you can see, all right, so here's a bunch of predictions. So Gojo made a test prediction. I made a test prediction back in the early days of this. You can see we launched groups back in 2022. And this is cool. Like it gives you a way that you can actually share predictions with specific members. What we're going to be doing, you can already tell, like this is I would click this, but then if you have the invite link, anyone can share or anyone can join. But we are going to be opening up the group feature for paid groups. So if you want to share with other people and then, they all have to pitch in, like you can do that, right? So the paid group leader advantage that we have here is that you're not stuck with a Telegram channel where all your calls are. You're going to be able to share those directly from Discord, Telegram, Chrome, the web, anywhere you are on your phone, right? And then afterwards, anyone else can view that and you're good to go, right? So it's kind of cool because like up until this point, people have been locked in. CapSwan allows you to aggregate all that information easily. I don't have to sit there and scroll through all of your left curve thoughts about memes and whatever else, right, to find the thing that I care about. And with the watch list, people are going to be able to attribute things to you that can then also show up in your group, right? So if, Ansem goes on a, stripper posting spree or whatever, and you don't want to see any of that, but you do want to hear his thoughts on WIF or whatever, well, there's a much easier way for us to aggregate that data for you. So this is a really exciting feature. And we're going to be integrating this, with the paid feature. But the reason I'm talking about this now is because we've spent a fair bit of time recently focused on community tickers, specifically meme coin tickers. So if you look, and scroll down a bit, you'll notice like we added Boomer and Bowden recently. And there's a bunch of communities. Shout out to Mamani and some of the fellows that are in the trenches of these communities right now, because Remilio and all these Retardio, I'm trying to think of all of them, Milady, right? All of these communities, we want an easy way for them to be able to share information. And so what we're going to be doing is adding a chat feature. The first version of that will be pretty basic. It's going to be a troll box that exists This is not going to, be a full-fledged social network. So you're not going to be able to get like a Friendtech or, Arena, whatever experience. Like that's just not viable. It's not our focus. However, you are going to have an easy way to share, and then you're going to be able to chat inside the Chrome extension. So you can move back and forth. You're not stuck, right? And we can talk potentially about integrating, maybe if the Arena or Friendtech guys want to give us an API to be able to import data so that people can, connect with OAuth and share that. Maybe that's an option we can explore in the future. But the bottom line is you'll have a pretty basic chat feature. Now, that's one part of this, and I know that's the thing that Ace really wants. But the thing that I'm excited about personally is this group overlay. So if you look, I have a Swan banner. This requires you to have the Swan NFT for it to display, but let's go to, I'll go to Max's profile. You'll notice that, here we go. I don't know why that didn't load at first. You'll notice that we can toggle between his Swan card and his actual header, right? And here you can see his Swan card with his contact info, and he's configured this however he wants. If I go to Ace's profile, for example, I don't know if he has one. I think, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Let's see, Brando maybe? Yeah, so you can see Brando does. And Brando's interesting because you can see that he has this feather collective at the top, right? So you can actually click this. And if you're part of the group, then you would be able to view that information. Now here you can see it's not public. I'm not a part of it, so I can't see his posts. However, if I was, I could access it easily. So what we're going to be doing is adding a small group icon to this, and we're going to allow people to toggle that on and off, so it's not inconvenient. If you don't want it, you don't have to use it. But if you are a Chrome extension user, you'll be able to see, hey, this person's part of my tribe. So imagine, to pull up whatever. So imagine for Bowden that you would see the Bowden logo underneath each of the posts. So if, let's say we had, I don't know what his handle is. Let's say we had Craig's handle. I think they used the ice cream emoji for that. But let's imagine instead that there was a Bowden group that you could actually click, and that would take you back to that, right? So you have some options there. And I'm really excited about this because this kind of community integration, yes, it's, being tied, or, we're going to have a paid group feature where you're going to be able to charge people money to be able to join your group. However, beyond that, like you're going to be able to use this to share calls, share dashboards, share strategies, chat across sites, right? And then you're going to be able to easily access that community wherever you are. So I'm really stoked about this. This is the next stage of CapSwan. As you guys know, we're going to be monetizing the product soon. We're going to have an early bird version that's, going to be cheap, probably like $10 a month or something like that. And basically to get people in the door, offer them some grandfather pricing. That's the strategy right now. And so that'll give you, access to the no code strategizer and some additional things in terms of like, anyways, you get the point. So having said all that, part of the reason I'm sharing this is I know that communities may have like a specific idea in mind. For example, we could change the color of a tweet. We could change, you could add an emoji instead of a group, a clickable group. We could add a bunch of things here. You can see that for our watch list specifically, we have the Swan icon that overlays so that you can easily add something to your watch list, right? So if you guys have any specific ideas or requests, please reach out. Let me know. I definitely want to hear them. I've reached out to a couple, these community founders directly, and I haven't heard anything really concrete that they want to see. So the plan right now is just to build kind of initial version 1 of this and see what comes back. But if you guys have feature requests, please hit me up. We would love to accommodate your community and find out how we can build the best possible product for you guys. So I think we can go ahead and start to wrap it up now that we've gone over the product. Let me look quickly at the live stream, just make sure that we don't have any questions. I'm obviously not great at streaming, so thank you for the patience. Cool. All right, looks like we don't have any questions. I'm going to swing over to the YouTube real quick just to make sure. Awesome. Looks like we're good. And I guess we'll call it there. Also, shout out to the KubeFirst team for the sweet shirt. Thanks for sending that. And I will catch you guys later. Peace.